move on. I want to go to the child porn issue, and I know that we've discussed this today on several different times. What's troublesome to me is your consistent pattern of sentencing these predators below the sentences recommended by the government and the sentencing guidelines. And Senator Cruz, Senator Hawley have laid out some of these disparities. I know Senator Blumenthal mentioned the Kids Online Safety Act that he and I are working on. You have talked about how horrifying it was to get some of that information. As we have held these hearings, that too has been horrifying. We've had moms from all over the country call us and tell us their story of how these pedophiles, these child abusers, these pornographers are using technology. And that technology has really advanced. And unfortunately, we know that online right now, it is more dangerous for kids than ever. Here's a couple of stats for you. In 21, NCMEC's cyber tip line received nearly 30 million reports of online child sexual abuse material, which is a 35% increase over 2020. Those 30 million tips contained 44.8 million videos and 39.9 million images. And as a mom and a grandmom, this is an issue of tremendous concern. I have grandsons that are 12 and 13 years old. And these are things that concern me, how these people work. I find the discussion that you made, the distinction you made between pedophiles who produce child pornography and those who are only collectors to be one without a difference. You said, and I'm quoting you, that it was a mistake to assume that child pornography offenders are pedophiles. Do you believe that it matters to the children and their parents who suffer abuse, what motivation those abusers had?
Thank you, Senator. As you said, and as I've said, these cases are among the most difficult.
They are.
For judges who have to deal with the evidence, judges who, like me, are parents.
My question, Judge, do you think it matters to the kids and their parents, the motives of the abuser, of the pornographer?
Senator, it does not matter to the victims in these cases what the motivation is. The quote, I'm not exactly sure where it came from. I know that what Senator Cruz showed me before was questions that I was asking in the context of a hearing to...
Okay. Well, I've got some serious concerns about that. I do want to go to your judicial philosophy and back to the 9th Amendment. President Biden said he was looking for a judicial nominee with a judicial philosophy that is more of one that suggests that there are unenumerated rights in the Constitution and all the amendments mean something, including the 9th Amendment. You told Senator Lee that you didn't discuss this statement with President Biden, but I want to know whether you agree with it. Do you share the judicial philosophy that President Biden is looking for? And Senator Kennedy tried to walk through some of this with you. Do you believe that the 9th Amendment is a source of unenumerated rights?
Senator, the Supreme Court has not found any unenumerated rights that derive from the 9th Amendment. And so that's not the precedent of the court. And there aren't any rights that have been established under that provision of the Constitution.
Okay. White House Chief of Staff Ron Klain has written that the Supreme Court should intervene whenever the nation's conscience and laws need a jolt in a progressive direction. Presumably, that is what he and his boss, President Biden, expect a justice to do. So do you believe that the role of the court is to intervene whenever we need a jolt in a progressive direction? And would you do that through the unenumerated rights? Would you do it on issues like abortion or any other issue?
Senator, the role of a judge is to decide cases and controversies based on the facts and the law, mindful of their obligation to rule impartially and to remain in consideration of only the law and their constraints under the Constitution.
Okay. A lot of special interest groups have come out in support of your nomination. One of those is Demand Justice, and they are a progressive dark money group that has launched a $1 million ad buy to push for your confirmation. Demand Justice is also pushing for radical changes to the structure of our country and our Constitution, including a demand that Democrats pack the Supreme Court. One of Demand Justice's board members has urged Senate Democrats to add 10 more justices to the court. It's clear that Demand Justice believes that if the issue of court packing were to come before you on the Supreme Court, you would rule in their favor. Are they wrong to believe that you would rule in their favor?
Senator, it's very unlikely that the issue of court packing would come before the Supreme Court. That question is in the province of Congress. It's a political question.
Okay. Let's see. I want to follow up on this Make the Road New York issue that has come up a couple of times today. Congress granted DHS sole and unreviewable discretion to determine which illegal immigrants should be deported. This means DHS's decision was unreviewable by a federal judge, and any attempt to challenge DHS's decision should have been dismissed by the court. And yet, you did the very opposite. You didn't dismiss it. You inexplicably construed the law to permit a judicial challenge to DHS's immigration decision, despite the plain language of the statute. The D.C. Circuit, where you sit, reversed you. It noted that it could hardly imagine a more definitive expression of congressional intent than the one in the law at issue. And it questioned how you could have come to any other conclusion based on the text of the statute. So I'd like to know what was ambiguous about the immigration law that we enacted, and we explicitly stated that DHS's decision was unreviewable. What more could we possibly have said or have made clear that you were not authorized to review DHS's decision?
Thank you, Senator. When Congress strips the court of jurisdiction, Congress, in many cases, does so explicitly. It says something other than sole and unreviewable. It says things like, no court shall hear, there's no jurisdiction to consider. There are ways that Congress clarifies that judges have no authority or no jurisdiction to hear a particular case. The D.C. Circuit considered jurisdiction with respect to this statute and this dispute and determined that the court did have jurisdiction, and the question was whether there was a cause of action to proceed. What I determined in looking at the statutes at issue in this particular case is that sole and unreviewable meant that DHS had the sole power to make a decision about.
not to interrupt you, my time is going to run out, and I want to be respectful of getting you out of here tonight. But we were clear in what we said on that. And I heard your explanation on that earlier today. That's why I wanted to come back to it tonight, because this is the kind of judicial activism that really concerns Tennesseans. These issues that I've been through with you today, the statements that I gave back to you last night in my opening, things that you had said, decisions that you had made, these cause concern. So we'll take up a little bit more of it tomorrow. Thank you for your graciousness, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much, Senator Blackburn. I want to thank Judge Jackson for this long day and part of it under tough circumstances. You were a model of grace under pressure. At times, things were said about you which turned out to be inaccurate. It was said you called President Bush and Secretary Rumsfeld war criminals. That didn't happen. It was said you also always sentence criminals too lightly. That's not exactly true. It was said you apologized to a defendant in a child pornography case without any sympathy for the victims, and that wasn't true either. The truth is you've been a judge for nearly 10 years. You've sentenced more than 100 defendants, some to decades in prison. And even the child pornography cases my colleagues continue to raise over and over with you, your sentences were in line with the recommendations of the government or probation office in the vast majority of the cases that you heard. We invited a number of people to come here today, and one special guest was a lady who cleans our office at night. She works the midnight shift, but she wanted to be here today to see you and hear you and stand by your side. And she said afterwards that it was a great moment for her to be in this room today. But she asked my staff, why are some people so mean? Well, I have to tell you, the overwhelming majority on both sides of the aisle were not mean. They were constructive and positive and really raised the important questions that we all care about. Some are always going to be a little disappointing. That's the nature of human life. Tomorrow morning, we're going to gather at 9 a.m. for John Ossoff and Tom Tillis. I don't know if America is ready. I know this committee will be ready, and thank you very much. And this